Hello, and welcome, folks. I hope everyone is okay and doing well today. And I officially had a countdown for the first time ever, so don't get excited. This is Julie's kind jig. I don't have a countdown usually. But welcome to... I think this is my first time hosting a live that wasn't part of the actual tarot podcast. So yeah.
Yay!
Julie's my willing victim.
I am the honored guest. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Are you saying hello to our people? We already have people here.
Yes, we do. Hello, Rose Honey Ritual and Aquamarine 18.
Yes. Hi, friends.
Hello.
Engage, by the way, in the chat as we go through. I'm assuming we will just pick up comments as and when it fits the narrative and when we catch them. And if we miss them, then don't take it personally. And if it's imperative that we read them, then just repeat.
Yes, all caps would be helpful for my old eyes.
Sure. Hey, Kerry, welcome.
Hello.
So today we are actually doing, like, for Julie at least, a part 2. So I'm just going to recap what Standout Decks is and how Julie and I came to this. So Julie, I think perhaps maybe a week or two before me as well, but the year of what I think is 2020, we both had the same idea for this hashtag, but on different platforms, and had absolutely zero awareness that the other had created it.
Yep, exactly.
Which I love, because it just goes to show that these things can happen organically. And I think we mostly had a similar idea, really. It's very chill. Standout Decks is very much what it sounds like. It's the standout decks of the year, so 2023 in this instance. And for those who want to participate, think about theirs, share them on social media platforms or share them in the comments. It's really any standout deck. The reason that Julie has taken a particular approach is because she's already done one portion of this. So if you haven't seen the 3 Girls 1 deck, then go and check out their video as well, because Sarah, Heather and Julie did 5 of their top standout decks for the year. And as far as I'm aware, Julie, you did mostly ones that you had attained in 2023?
Yes, I wanted to not overthink it. So I gave myself the limit of, acquired in 2023. They might not have been published at that time, but acquired. And then I stuck to tarot. Yeah. So I'm branching out for this one, because I could talk all day long about standout decks. Let's be real,
Yeah, me too, especially with like a 90 deck heavy collection.
Yes. Exactly. And we all know, those kind of like top 5 type of responses they're always so much fun. But then by the next day, that could look so different. I could, like, even today, I could totally pick another 5, you know what I mean? Or like replace different ones that I talked about yesterday. So, but all in good fun. So
awesome. Aquamarine said, I'm oddly intrigued by what the twist is going to be. And now I feel panicked that I've oversold. Basically, the twist is that some of the ones that I share on Instagram are going to be discussed here and vice versa. And for Julie, it's going to be other standout decks that weren't discussed in that one. And also the fact that I was hosting us live together. So perhaps twist was the wrong word. Never mind. Sorry, Laura.
Wah, wah. Sorry to disappoint. We'll still try to make it fun.
Yeah. Oh, and we've got a comment for you, Julie.
Oh, yay. I'm so happy, Carrie. That's amazing. I'm so glad that the Delos Tarot is now back in stock and that people are able to acquire that deck, because it really is precious.
How surreal that, like, literally 20 minutes before or after you started doing your video, or whenever it was so close.
Yes, it was. Talk about, very serendipitous. So wonderful time.
Yeah, so be prepared to experience lots of loving feelings towards decks that you'd never even contemplated ever owning before, because that's very much videos go. I will not take responsibility for your purchases whilst you're watching, but do feel free to share if you get some promo that you press buy.
Exactly. Purchase responsibly, as always. But yeah.
But with joy. So do share.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm doing tarot, oracle. I think nothing else. It's no surprise, right? There's going to be no Lenormand because I can't read Lenormand. I'm crap at it. So I start off with an oracle deck. It probably won't be much of a big chat, this one, but I wanted to start off with something that people wouldn't expect from me because I had become otherwise bit too predictable, and I thought I would throw some difference in. So let's see if I can remember how to make myself solo now and not mute myself. There we go. Yeah, you can already see one of my other decks. Spoiler.
And not too surprising either.
No, I can't zoom in. Oh my gosh, maybe I do need to change the lighting for the angle in because that feels very bright. Most of my decks aren't white, in fairness. I don't feel like a lot of people are going to be familiar with this little deck either. It's actually called the Here and Now Oracle, and it's got these tiny little mushroom backs, and it's made by 𝗂𝗄𝗄𝗏, who, if anyone is on my Patreon, or if anyone's kind of quite familiar with my poetry tastes, then they'll know that her poetry / sort of prose and prayers book is one of my all-time favourites. And she also made an animal deck, which I got this year. But the Here and Now Oracle is basically loads of R words. The whole deck is, are they all RE? I think they are. How for me, I'm going to say cool, and everyone's going to laugh and be like, this is not what cool is, Tegan. But in my world and my love of language, this is actually very, very cool. The fact that she's been able to find that many words that begin with RE is just kind of deliciousness personified for someone who is a bit of a thesaurus nerd. Like, I love getting a thesaurus up on my computer and looking for all of the synonyms for words and trying to stretch my vocabulary. So that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of obsessed with this. But also, this is super versatile, and it kind of brought into my practice something that I often talk about, and I've used other oracle decks before, but I've used in particular because I don't have a spread deck as a spread deck, which I think is very fun. So basically just like shuffling, picking out 3 cards, and then so here I've got replace, reflection, resentment, and then pulling my tarot cards on top of them as like a focal point per tarot card. So it's like it's like a loose spread. Perhaps there's less of a narrative woven in between them, but I can do that after.
I love that. That's a great idea.
Just so freaking nifty. And I have it in this, I basically won a giveaway of hers, and when I won the giveaway, so this was part of the giveaway and some other bits, and then I bought her animal deck and added it to the giveaway package. But she also sent me this little pot with a ghostie on it that she made, which is freaking adorable.
That is really cute. I think I remember seeing that in a previous video, and I wanted it. I wanted it for myself.
Yeah. She makes just some of the most sort of, I feel like they're very homely and wholesome ceramic offerings.
Yes, that's a perfect description.
Yeah, they're very quintessentially her as well, which I love. And it just so happens, I'm sure not her intention for this pot at all, that this fits into it perfectly. So I have it on my altar, not on the top, but under one of the shelving bits. And then I literally just thumb around it and pick a card for the day as well, or several.
Gotcha.
So it's just freaking versatile. And when you've had a year, which, without boring everyone, let's just cap off 2023 for me as being fucking difficult. This is a standout because when I don't feel like having heavy divination practice, this is always there for me in a way where it feels accessible, friendly, versatile. I can focus on the language, I can focus on the emotion that comes up. I'm not really forced to sway in one way or another because it's very non-assumptive, where it doesn't have all the visuals and stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty obsessed with it, and also I knew that people wouldn't be able to guess it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that, and I love that. And Marlena is asking how many cards in that deck, because it is quite a chunky deck. Like, is it over 100 cards or?
If I knew the answer. I tell you what, Marlena, as I listen to Julie, because my head is this way inclined, and I'm very good at multitasking. I will count, and then I will let you know. I want to say about between 60 and 80, but I honestly have no damn clue.
It's a considerable amount. That's actually a generous amount given an oracle.
Absolutely.
So I am all about kind of word-based, text-based decks. I think they're really cool. And I don't see a whole lot of them, but I do have one or two myself. So very cool.
Yeah, definitely not a lot of them. So I'm going to bring you into focus now, Julie.
Okay. All right. So I then, following up, will actually start with an oracle as well.
Awesome.
And this is the Hellenic Oracle.
Nice.
And this is by Thea over at Garden Goddess Tarot. And hopefully you can see this okay. I purchased this because I've always had a love for Greek mythology and always had it in mind to kind of reacquaint myself with stories that I learned when I was younger, and also new stories, new characters. I know that there is, the mythic tarot, the OG one, and then there's a newer version. And I know that there are other myth-based decks. The art is always a little bit not quite my thing, whereas this, I think this is what pre-Raphaelite art. I am not an art history major, so but I really liked her choices in terms of like the art period that she used for this deck. A lot of I think his name is John William Waterhouse. He's one of the artists that I really love, and I have a couple of his paintings in prints in my home. One of them being of Narcissus and Echo. So I just felt like 77 cards. Sorry, I'm interrupting myself. I just saw that's a good chunk.
Like, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so this was an acquisition where I really wanted to do a dedicated study of Greek myths, and it's been fun, and it's been, just kind of as I feel I'm in the mood. So this has been stretched out throughout the year, and it will continue to be, something that I do 2024, however long I feel I want to do it. And, I've also done a couple videos kind of just talking about some of the realizations I've had or impressions I've had revisiting certain myths. So, and that's been a lot of fun. So in general, this has been, I think that not only did she do a fantastic job curating the images for the different myths and characters, but but it also serves as a wonderful kind of like study deck. And she does have, I believe, a Patreon dedicated to going more deep into these cards, and not so much like a printed guidebook or anything like that, which I think it's totally fine that there isn't a guidebook, because this is the type of deck that warrants your own exploration, in my opinion, like your own dedicated study and taking like what you personally want from each of these myths. So yeah, again, I feel like this is going to be a study that really spans, you know, could be into 2025, 2026. Who knows? Who knows? But this has been a nice experience this year.
Yeah. It's I'm curious, when you study a myth, do you find that once you've sort of taken away what you get from it, do you find then if you were to pull a card, it would spark that memory for you?
The memory of, do you mean of when I first
Well, just like the myth. So as you're sort of, I suppose, carving meanings from like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in terms of the story, always going back to the story. For the most part, yes. In ones that I remember from girlhood,
Yeah.
or ones where maybe I'm new to that myth and I find it to be particularly striking. For sure, I think this is one of those decks where it is very much kind of based on what I've learned of that story, what I've learned of that character. And then that's what I've basically been kind of creating my own guidebook, if you will. You know, so what I'll do is I will, you know, I'll just do like a blind kind of pull, a random draw, you know, and I will read up. If I don't know very well that particular myth, or I want to reacquaint myself, I will read up on it, take notes, and then kind of derive my own keywords, if you will. And then so I have kind of like, I have a notebook for note taking, and then I have like a separate kind of little like notebook for actual like meanings and keywords as like a quick and dirty reference that I hope to have, you know, completed, who knows when, but once that's completed, that will be my guidebook for this deck, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I know exactly what you mean. And whilst the cards had meanings on them for the deck I'm going to mention, with my compendium of constellations, I actually went through it several years back and did the same thing where I looked up the most dominant. Some of the constellations have a couple. The most dominant that linked to the keywords, so that I could create a book so that I knew why the keywords had been chosen.
Right. Yes, exactly. And it's such a rewarding experience to do that. I mean, it's such a great way to bond with the deck, you know, to actually put that work into it. So, oh, okay, there's a podcast. Let's talk about myths, baby. Okay, I'm going to have to jot that down. Thank you.
I thought you would. I was like, I might note that as well. So this deck has been on my radar ever since 𝗵𝘁𝗍 made it.
Yeah.
But I'm one of those Brits, you know, buying anything from even those printer places in the UK, it just absolutely assassinates us on customs and post.
Oh yeah, I know. It sucks so bad.
But it is freaking stunning.
Yeah.
For some reason in the UK, like Greek stuff is taught in of my era before it sort of like diversified more. We were taught a lot of myth over here in particular. So I've got a fair amount of knowledge already sitting around in there, but just not being useful.
No, I hear you. I feel similarly in that it's definitely just it's almost, I mean, because it's been so long, it's been a hot minute since I really re-immersed myself in Greek mythology. It feels like I am in some ways starting from scratch. And I think that's not a bad thing, because even with some of the myths that I was revisiting from like when I read them, back in 6th grade, completely different lens. Definitely more of a feminist lens than when I was like in 6th grade, for sure. So
I think reading about Medusa as an adult, a whole different experience in itself.
Yes, and she, you know, she's my girl. She is my girl, and I love her so much. Yes. So that is my one Oracle standout for 2023.
I love it, and I agree, Meg. Got to do the work. That is where of those kind of decks in particular, and a good way, I feel like, to slow us down in our practice from the other excitement of like the new deck and the next deck. And
exactly. I just think that there's something to be said for really putting that time in, and that's, for me anyway, that's how I truly develop a strong bond with that deck, because I've put that time into it, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I've tried to, well, I say zoom in a little bit. It doesn't let me do that. But whilst Julie was talking, I've pushed my camera down further. So I hope it'll be a bit closer this time. Because as you can see, I'm super professional and always prepared.
You would fit in with the three girls because we too are super profesh. So.
So let's go for a tarot this time. It's about to get more predictable as time shifts through, though. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
I was like, awesome. So no surprise to what a card to start on. No surprise that anyone I don't know, actually, because I don't feel like I've spoken about this as much on YouTube. My YouTube's been a bit flip-floppy this year, actually. But on Instagram stories, which is another thing I've noticed, a lot of my decks have been private use, in that I haven't even remembered to take like photos of my pictures, photos of my spreads for like posts on Instagram, or there've been readings that I've done for like tarot clients, basically. And when I went back to like look at some of the decks I'd used the most, I was like, well, Instagram is not a good reflection this year, so maybe be surprised. But I was gifted, and I was nerdy, and I did write down when I got each deck, because that's who I am. So by the way, the Reclaim was the end of 2022. The reason I wrote them down is because quite a few decks that I chose I don't think I got a lot of decks in 2023 anyway, but quite a lot of them aren't from 2023. So I thought that was interesting. The 𝗵𝗁𝗍 was gifted to me sort of mid-2022 by Logan of Lark and Legend, because it was a Christmas and Yule gift crossover, and it had been on my wish list for the longest time. This one is the illustrated pips, so basically the 𝗫𝗿𝗁𝗀𝗃 version, not the 𝗪𝗂𝗃. I was open to either. Ironically, I was most bothered about what colour I got. You know, because that's apparently how I roll. Well, I read pips and I read very secret cards, so it's kind of, I know it sounds strange, but it's much of a muchness to me. Like, in a lot of ways, tarot is tarot, and I can adjust my school of thought and styles very quickly, but visually I like what I like. So
oh yeah, makes sense. I think that we can all speak to that, I feel, in some degree.
But this is really interesting, because as I've moved into like more of an animistic approach with my decks, and been in more of a place to consider like the deck's energy, and then how I engage with the artwork, and then obviously my natural reading style, it's where I've realized like I have these really big different reading experiences from tarot to tarot to tarot. So I kind of had to acknowledge that. And whilst it sounds a little on the nose to say that this is a cheeky deck, I don't I don't literally mean because of all the cheeky bums, and I feel like this is actually more playful in its illustration than the Deviant Moon Tarot, and I've got both. But it's not so much that, it's how this freaking deck comes up. I've used it with a return tarot reading client of mine a few times, and one of the things that I notice when I read with it is some of the symbols that come up will legitimately be talking about what we're referencing, and it's one of those, you just couldn't make that shit up. We could be talking about something to do with I'm trying to think now, because of course my brain's going to evade we were talking about something about ancestry, and then there was like a ghosty looking skeleton thing in the background of one of the images with the main character at the front, and it was sort of looking over their shoulder with, oh, there we go, thank you. It's an interesting one. It cheekily speaks to, if you were saying like, oh, I feel like I've been being a bit of a dick, but maybe I've not, like I'll explore it in the cards, and there will be some way that it visually reaffirms that you've been being a dick. as well as kind of the whole, because the Four of Coins, this Rider-Waite depiction, could go in one completely different way, but the fact we're talking about ancestry and feeling a presence and stuff like that, which I don't want to share more because obviously it wasn't my reading, and then this comes up, it's cheeky, it's kind of a bit edgy, and between reading for that person and reading for myself, I've just had some really interesting moments with it where it's been a little bit goosebumpy, I think is the best way to explain it. Like, it's surprised me. It definitely surpassed my experience with the Deviant Moon Tarot, which has been really hit and miss, even though I love the artwork on it. And it's actually, it's hands down one of probably my 3 ever favorite Rider-Waite-Smith decks ever, because of course it is very Rider-Waite-Smith.
Wow. Okay. Because
Yeah.
Marlena was asking if the deck competes with the Deviant Dude for you, but you're saying you actually might prefer this one over?
Yeah, absolutely no competition whatsoever, to be honest, because first with the Deviant Dude, as you call it, the Deviant Dude, I don't like cardstock, and I know that sounds very superficial, but as a lot of us have attained for whatever reasons, mine definitely a hand pain thing as well, is that it doesn't work very well in my hands, which doesn't make me want to use the deck. So what I realised is the style of artwork is very much a taste of mine, like that steampunk kind of era, sort of, I can't think of the other word I want for it. I'm just thinking of like Victorian factory, like not a lovely memory, but it's got that kind of vibe to it. So I enjoy the artwork. But as a reader, for me, it never really, it feels a lot more still in place, I suppose. Like the images feel like they evoke less in a storytelling capacity. And I can't put my finger on why. I did get rid of my borderless edition, and then Logan, he tried the bordered edition, didn't like it, sent it to me. And so now I've got the bordered edition, which I actually prefer. Yeah, it's easier, it's slightly shorter, so it's just, and slightly wider, so it's a better shape, and I think the borders break up the sort of the brown, whereas this is almost all green and it doesn't bother me. So yeah, it's just one of those weird vibe things where for whatever reason it just didn't work. This reminds me, although I know that the thing I'm about to say is kind of, it has its own issues, but it reminds me of the kind of Punch and Judy era that was probably like very common when my grandparents and great-grandparents were alive. So
I totally can see that. Yeah, Punch and Judy for sure. Yeah.
There's kind of that nostalgia there, even though I know Punch and Judy is inherently like not the best when you reality of it. But yeah, this is a very cool deck, and for anyone who's curious, because I will probably get asked after otherwise, it's the 𝗺𝗿𝗄𝗄𝗏 colouring, but his colourings change constantly, so whether you get it, I don't know.
Yeah, Mia's saying here, Valenza is the tarot world's Willy Wonka.
For sure, that dude knows how to sell. It's like, you want it in this colour, I'll bring it out in this colour.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to make it multicoloured. It's an interesting salesmanship, because I feel like others might have tried this and people would have been like, look, you're pushing it now a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
But for some reason, he's managed to sink through and steal so many of our hearts, because I remember thinking, like, how many colours are you going to bring out? But legit, I know people who favour different colours, me included. So I'm very appreciative as well.
Yeah, and I have to say, even though his decks aren't my thing, the range of the different color options, like I do I understand the appeal. I find them quite appealing. Like, you know, the deck that you just showed up, it's like color wise, that is very appealing to me.
Yeah.
For someone who doesn't really care for, you know, his decks. I did try the Deviant Dude at one point, and you know, just ultimately wasn't for me. Now, if he had come out with that deck in a different color scheme, you know, maybe that would be different. But
It might
yeah.
have been, or just a flexible card stock. Like the card stock.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
It isn't his fault. That's US Games publishing, right? But his own card stock is absolutely luscious. So, yeah.
Awesome. Very
Big
cool.
diff. So, over to you, my dear.
All right. Well, I'm going to piggyback off you once again and show a deck that Logan gave to me as a gift. And such a sweet gesture. And it's one that he had alerted me to this deck. And I had seen it randomly here and there, and kind of it fell off my radar. But like it's definitely, it's my kind of aesthetic, and it's my cup of tea, which is the Wandering Moon Tarot. And it is a deck that is newer. I haven't had it for very long, but I have spent a good deal of time getting to know this deck. Well, so first of all, hello, holographic, which, you know what, honestly, I know people love this. It hurts my hands, but it's very pretty.
Yeah, it looks good, but it bites, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I, you know, frankly, I could do without. And I think there's actually a version of this that's called like Midnight version. I don't know, where it's like black with like all this hollow. It's cool. I have to say though, I do like this basic version in that it really better illustrates her art technique, which I think it's reminiscent to pointillism, where it's like these, you know, little dots, you know, creating these fuller images based on these really just like, you know, stabby dots, very kind of George Seurat. So I do have an appreciation for pointillism. Again, not an art history major, but and I also love like the minimalistic aspect of this deck, and because I can go on both spectrums. I'm totally for a deck that's like completely OTT and detailed, you know, with a lot of different image aspects. And then more minimalistic decks like this, I'm also all for, because I feel like it tends to make me focus a little more. And I feel like there's also a kind of calm vibe to more minimalist decks, especially this one, which is just black and white, right? So you know, this is RWS based. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I love that the Four of Swords come up. You're like, it gives me a calm vibe. And
right? Yeah. Yeah. And it is one that I, again, had to put some time in to get to know, just because it is so subtle and minimalist, that, and a lot of hands and hand gestures that on the surface, it almost might look like certain cards are kind of redundant or repetitive. But if you look in her little guidebook here, you know, it's this little thing, but it's not to be ignored, because she does go into the inspiration behind, you know, the reason why she illustrated the card. And so she will point out these subtle little things in terms of like the hand position, or the position of the different elements in relation to, you know, the outstretched hand. It's a very handsy deck. So if you're not about handsy decks, then this might not be for you. But I guess I like handsy decks, because I enjoy this. So I will say, one thing I'm not normally a fan of is the renaming of the minors, but I was able to get past it, because she only relabels or renames the cups to moons and the pentacles to, oh, I don't remember, stars. Pentacles to stars. Yes. See, that's the thing. So you know, having to keep track of 2 renamed is certainly better than me having to keep track of 4. So that's fine. But again, this is one where I feel like I'm still getting to know it. But I'm just finding the minimalist quality very calming. It's great for, you know, a daily draw. I've paired it with other decks, and it speaks nicely with the other decks, probably because it is so kind of unassuming in its minimalist quality. The quartz are, again, they're a minimalist in terms of, you know, it's very kind of elementally based, right? So you have the minor, you know, the what is it called? The element of, you know, the swords or the wands, and then, you know, the element of the knight being, is it air? Can't remember. Yeah. So then you have the feather. See, I'm still learning. And so she does that for each court. And I think like the queen, you see that in terms of like the queen's outstretched hand. So there are these motifs that she's good about keeping consistent to help you learn the deck more quickly, given that it does stray from, it's not just a clone. So with the page, you know, again, the whole earth element, you see like foliage, and that's the motif that she uses with all the pages, for example. So I think that that's why this works for me, and that she keeps things like that consistent. So yeah, this is one that I'm still, I feel like getting to know in a sense, but I really, really love. Like this Eight of Swords, just, I think it's fabulous. And yeah, I've just been really, really enjoying it. It's not a deck that I necessarily would have picked up for myself.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a U deck, if that makes sense. And then,
yeah, right.
When you said happy, I was thinking, well, you know, we both love Raven's Prophecy, and that's
yeah, exactly. And that is a handsy deck. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those decks where it's like, oh, I think it's very pretty, and but just because there's such a plethora of decks out there, this probably would have been passed over for other decks that would have been higher on my list, kind of thing. So then, you know, as a result, more kind of subtle, subdued decks like these kind of fall off the radar for me, quite frankly. So yeah, so thank you to Logan for alerting me to this and sending this to me, because I really do enjoy it. And I really do appreciate the kind of pointillism art, the minimalist art.
He's such a glorious tarot god fairy.
Right? Not mad at it at all.
No.
So, yeah.
Awesome. And Marlena is rather enjoying the inappropriate thoughts that she's having about Hansi comment.
That tracks for Marlena. Peen and hands.
Yeah, and I'm sure that at some point one of my decks is going to have titties in it, so people get used to that with my channel.
We are adults here, are we not? So
well, I mean, I try.
Yeah, we do try. We do. It's all in good fun.
It is. So, I'm looking at my pile, like, who wants to come out next? Well, I did a tarot, so let's revert back to an oracle deck, I think. And hopefully, I feel like my camera hasn't been wildly well in focus, but we're gonna roll with it. It could just be my internet signal, which is sad, but I can do about this. So this one is the Coastal Curiosities, and this was gifted to me just out of the sweetness of her heart, not gifted for review or any of that stuff, but this was gifted to me by the creator Lennox. That's the box. Now, I'm sorry, people are going to see out of print decks on my, anywhere that has something to do with me, there's going to be an out of print deck at some point. So
hey, whatever. Yeah, sorry, not sorry, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to live, and you want me to tell the truth, and my truth is this deck is a really interesting sweet spot for me, in one of those ways when you get a deck and you become so enamored with it that very occasionally there's that moment where, like, I could whittle down my decks to like 5 and focus on this one and I wouldn't miss any of the others.
Yes.
Not true for someone who spends so much time indoors and so much time reading. But it was, when I get that feeling with a deck, I know that it's hitting like a very, very sweet spot, because it's not often that I want to just get rid of my entire collection and become like solely engaged with one deck. But I think for me, I've realised people are going to be like, "There's a spider," so I'm going to move. I'm gonna move it. People must hate me when they're arachnophobes, because I know that I sigh, but it's only because I know people are scared of other animals
and snakes.
Yeah. I'm just gonna traumatise you. Be prepared for some light trauma. It won't stick with you forever, but it will. This deck is kind of like one of those. It's I wasn't the best person at art, but I've said before, I did study art, and then I studied fashion before I realised, yeah, no, onto a different career. But I am very much into animals. I'm very much into nature, and the kind of natural history meets old encyclopedia of stuff vibe that this has going on, and the contrast between the black and white element and then the nature element is just one of those things that really, it's like, if I wanted to collage, if I wanted to have a book full of what are they called, like, you know, like junk journals and things like that,
with ephemera and all that, yeah,
this would be one of my vibes. The keywords are a really just glorious array, and I just feel like it's one of those ones that slotted into my practice really naturally, and it's kind of refreshing for me, because whilst it has animals on it, it has several, and like, I've been working with animals even in a divinatory practice, I mean, not consistently, but since I was little. So working with one animal is like, it's not too much for me. It's fine. I like to be, what's the word, kind of pushed to sort of diversify that. And the fact that there's several animals on here and there's other symbols, and it's sort of relies on if you want to do this with a deck, because you could just be like, oh, okay, distraction, and work with whatever else you're doing with it. But for me, it's like, what is it about thistle? I'm gonna say this is thistle, I could be really freaking wrong. The book does say what everything is. Like, what is it about this? What is it about the sound of the bell? What is it about the skull? How does this work together? Like, I do like to overcomplicate my experience with cards. It's something that keeps me busy, and it's something that brings me just, yeah, strange deep joy, apparently. So I think that it's like quite a mentally meets energetically kind of stimulating deck for me, in terms of, I like where I get with it, and I like the energy that I get straight up, but there's a lot of extra stuff that I do behind the scenes. And then, as someone who likes to use decks with other decks, this is such a interesting mishmash of, like, see, I called it like old gaudy wallpapers, whereas Lennox said it was like reminded her of old handmade like quilts and stuff. But either way, there's one of everything in here. So it basically goes with all of my decks almost. It's so freaking versatile. And yeah, it's one of those things where I'm not one of those people, by the way, who gets gifted a deck and loves it. Like, I often warn people, if you're going to gift me something, if I don't use it, I will pass it on. Like, please don't be offended. And if you will be offended, don't gift it to me.
Right. Exactly.
I'm like, I'm not this person. I won't fall in love with it just because it's from you. Like, you're awesome, but it won't make me love a deck. So, but yeah, it's one of those, it reminds me of being little, actually, like picking up rocks. And I was that weird kid. Like, I collected animal encyclopedias and Also, like how to look after your pet, you know, like how to look after your rabbit, how to look after your gecko, insert whatever animal that I didn't own. Freaking loved those books, and now I'm an adult and I can get decks that look like it too.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it's just look, speaking of which, oh, and also just quickly, the fact that it's got bugs and reptiles in it galore really brings me deep joy, because as an animal deck person, I like all of the animals, so it's no shade to like freaking the wolves and the lions and the various deer, but like some of which are in here, but I can guess what animals are going to be in a deck nowadays, almost about 90% of what's going to be in them based on who's making it and where they're from. And this array is like, yes, insect, like give me something. Like, when do I see tadpoles in a deck? Never.
Yeah, very true. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's a tadpole again. I make myself look like Polly now, but it's fine.
Remind me, what's the name of that deck again?
So it's called Coastal Curiosities.
Coastal Curiosities, that's what it was.
I don't know. I will not speak Lennox, because, oh my God, please do not go and hound this wonderful human. But I don't know whether they'll bring it back at some point. It's all I know is that I'm pretty sure it's out of print at the moment, and that they were focusing on their recent successful Kickstarter for a tarot deck, which is just as glorious. So maybe it will come back in the future, who knows. I think actually the nicer the community are and the less we hound people, the more likely we are to get these things back.
I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah. And have I missed anything? Marlena says I want more bugs too. I know, me too. Well, in my decks, not in my house, but
Exactly. I'm with you there.
Which coast? The coastal region. It's a good question, Meg. And 𝗵𝘁𝗀𝗄𝗃, it's not my coastal region. Of course, I have not remembered that. It's the Pacific Northwest. So that is the coastal region. Let's make, so on to you. Tarot or Oracle, what will it be?
I'm going to go with tarot, because that Coastal Curiosities kind of reminds me a little bit about this deck that I'm going to show, just in terms of like the kind of collage, soft collage style. And so this is the Zerna Farber tarot. This is the more recent mass market, like smaller version, because I know that they've had how many previous iterations of this deck where, and I think also under a different name, whereas like
this deck, because the giant ass one with white borders or colored borders, white back, I can't remember.
Yeah, so I have seen different iterations, and for the most part I think I passed on it because I think the cardstock was just too big, or there was just something about it in terms of the formatting that I wasn't about. So when I heard that they had come out with this smaller version, hopefully you can see this okay, I'm not zoomed in, but and I don't have great light here, shocking. But yeah, when I heard that they had come out with this smaller version, I definitely took the plunge, because there's just something about this art. It is very, yes, Zerna Farber or Enchanted Tarot, yes. So I just love the whole kind of collage feel to it, and the fact that it is just so, it feels, it looks textured. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like you could reach through and kind of feel the textures of the deck. So I love that. And I think that this is a deck that has a very romantic feel. A bit like the Coastal Curiosities. That feels a bit like kind of romantic to me. Maybe it's because maybe it's like the floral, I don't know, but the same with this. Like if I were to, if someone were to come to me with like a romance question, you know, or like a relationship query, I feel like this would be a fantastic deck for that. And so I'm just happy to, finally kind of have this, and that it reads nicely for me. I just think the images are very beautiful and soft, like I said. I feel like this is a deck where it's kind of like a mix of like, for the minors, like some of them feel a little bit more pippish, and then others feel a little more illustrated. So it's a mix. And yet that doesn't feel jarring to me. I feel like in other decks where I've seen that, I'm just like, pick a lane and stay in it. But with this one, I'm not mad at it at all. I just think because the images are beautiful. And
the artwork's quite cohesive.
It is.
Not the ones that are more pippish don't look stark in contrast.
Exactly. Like pips with feelings, like they say. So I would say maybe the only little gripe is that while I love this smaller format because it's easier for me to handle, because there are so many details, I do find myself kind of wanting to be like, can we enlarge that like a little bit so that I can see? But hey, you can't have it, you can't have it all the way.
Now I need to know, this is confession time. Have you ever done that with your fingers to something that's tangible?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Baby photos I was given the other month. I literally and went, oh, awesome! What's that in the background? And put my finger. And
it's like
I do.
But that is what I do tend to want to do with this deck, because it is so beautiful and there are so many lovely little details. So I'm just kind of like, can I what But on the whole, I'm just really pleased that I have this deck, and like I said, it feels like nice and soft and romantic, and romance is not, funny enough, like romance in terms of like movies and reading, one of my favorite genres, but I wouldn't say that I have like a lot of kind of romantic decks. But I would classify this in kind of that category. It feels kind of romantic to me.
Yeah, so. It looks it to me, and the colors are vibrant as well, which is beautiful. And what's cardstock like?
Cardstock is, not fantastic, but I'm just so used to that. Like it's even though it's small, so I can overhand and grip it comfortably to overhand. In terms of like riffle shuffling, I have to definitely cut it into smaller batches and riffle shuffle like the smaller batches that way. So, and funny enough, like, okay, so Logan also has this deck, and he did not have issues like this, kind of like production issues. Whereas I feel like maybe I just got a lemon, but like like color, like just color discrepancy. I don't know if this is like a
because that does really show. One's like quite blue purple, and the other look really funny.
Exactly. So you can see, and I don't know if anybody else has this particular smaller edition, but it's a mix. And I don't know if that's intentional or not. And I mean, it's fine. This was a lovely birthday gift, so it doesn't matter. I'm not. It's just the backs, which I can take or leave. They're fine. The initials, whatever. I love me some purple, but yeah, this one seemed to have a bit of like quality control issues, but it's okay. It's okay.
Otherwise, it's stunning.
Yeah, it really is. I really am a fan of the color palette, and just the collage quality is just it looks tactile, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm all about it. Is this version really small? I mean, like it's so compared to a standard. No, it's okay. So compared to a standard, like it's about that much smaller.
And that's
this is a Llewellyn standard card specs. So for a tarot. So I would say significantly, in my opinion.
Yeah. It reminds me a bit more of the 𝗺cia or 𝗺cia.
Yes.
Like the 𝗪𝗺𝗺 and decks like that.
Exactly. And actually, I do have a 𝗺cia here, so I think this might even be smaller than a 𝗺cia.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah, it's even smaller. So this is a Fournier in the back.
Wow.
And it's even, yeah, a little bit smaller than that. So that's what you're getting.
Yeah, I can see why you can shuffle it despite the cardstock now, because I'm like, shuffle bad cardstock at any size that's like Fournier or smaller.
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. I love that. I also love that people are going to be on my channel and seeing some decks that they wouldn't usually see, because otherwise people are going to get real tired of me real fast.
Well, you and I were talking before the live started, like, are we going to have any, like, we're going to have any decks that we have in common? And we're like, I don't think so.
No. Which is funny, because you've definitely got decks that I like. I just don't have them for whatever reason. Like I said, that cat deck, like, I really want it. I love 𝗳𝗿𝗄𝗃's art.
Yeah.
But I don't want to pay £30 for a Llewellyn deck where I am 100% not going to use the box or the book. So
yeah, I hear you
on that one. And
yeah, I totally hear you.
Because there's a couple of cats in it that just look like they need to be in my presence.
Yes, exactly. I mean, Adam Oehlers, he's just a fantastic artist in general. So I really, that's the highlight, of course, of that deck, is just the artwork is fantastic. But I do agree, Meg, it is a bit small. And, you know, I'm dealing. I still love it. Despite that, I still love it, because I would rather be able to like handle it and use it. The larger version, I knew that I wouldn't use it. Yeah, I wouldn't use it because it'd be too big and piss me off.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the thing I usually pay the price of, is like, I would rather small to a point and usable. But what Julie's really telling us is that someone needs to get her a magnifying glass for you.
And I have a magnifying glass, actually.
Oh,
that I do use.
I'm telling you, I'm all about them. I'm all about, and also on my my Christmas wish list, although, you know, whether it'll get bought or not, I don't know. But in the end, my partner took the piss, and so I've had to specify on the wish list now. I put some tiny, like really tiny binoculars on there.
Oh, cute.
And because I'm not walking and stuff at the moment because of pain and yada yada, but I watch the birds in the garden still, and we get a lot more small birds in this new garden. Yeah. And I was like, binoculars just to sit on the floor in my living room and like look out. And my partner's like, what do you want binoculars for? So I've had to put in brackets now next to the binoculars, specifically for bird watching.
There you go. We also have binoculars set by the bay window, where we have a view of our backyard and the bird feeder we have set up there. So binoculars are fabulous for bird watching, a necessity.
They are. I mean, for creepy stuff, no. For bird watching. Marlena has officially broken with the
handsy binoculars. Oh, fantastic.
Right, so what did I share? Coastal, that's right. I'm like, where am I? What am I doing? I actually, interestingly enough, I have more Oracle than I do Tarot, just. But I also have quite a few standouts, so whether I get through them all is another thing. But I am going to talk about the one that is in this bag, which, again, people are probably sick of seeing. This is the one with the titties in, as I promised.
Well, now we got to see some titties, since we're talking about handsy, you know, binocular, handsy, peen, titties.
There is sadly no peen in this one, because it's all the. So for anyone who doesn't know, or I haven't said before, the individual depicted, the woman depicted, is actually the creator, and it's her the whole way through this one. So this is this. So, and this will confuse people as well. So I'm just going to get the sodding box. It's the Story Medicine Tarot Animal Woman edition. So what she did is she created 4 decks, all called Story Medicine Tarot because she is Story Medicine Tarot. And then I think the first one is just called that. The second one's Animal Woman. The third one is the Baba Yaga red one. And the fourth one is, I want to say, either Seaweed or Kelp Woman, and it's green. So they're all very visually different, but they all have Story Medicine Tarot in the title.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Get that out of the way. In remembering when I got my deck. So this one I've had since, well, I say since 2021, but it was like the cusp of 2021 because it was a Christmas present, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think when I got this deck and I'd started talking about it that year, so like 2022, I had said to people, this is a really good one for working on stuff myself. I got it for embodiment working. Like, I don't want to repeat myself too much for those that have already heard it, but it was a very much more thematic, visceral, emotion and physical based experience and process, as opposed to my more dominant kind of mind analytical explorative stuff. So I wanted something that really coaxed me into my body and really challenged me to let the emotion jump out before I tried to contain it or do something with it or whatever it was. And it worked really well for that. But I'm pretty sure I went on record saying, oh yeah, this is a deck that I'm only going to use for myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The liars. Since then, but I have to say, and it's not to make anyone who gets like a tarot reading from me feel bad if we're not familiar with each other, but the reason that this ended up going into tarot practice is because I was already very very familiar and intimate with the person who asked for this deck. So I think once I've been reading for someone for a while, then I can pretty much pick up any deck and read for them. But if it's someone new and we don't really have like established either professional relationship or friendship, I tend towards particular groups of decks. So I'd never really thought about this one outside of myself, and it would have definitely been a standout for that originally. But it was another one that's been really, really profound in readings. And again, it's really good for if someone comes to me and they want that same kind of thing. It's like they're not looking to see a very familiar depiction of tarot for a start, which most people aren't going to get with me, but I do have some Rider-Waite-Smith decks for the people who want them. But if you really don't want the familiarity of like some form of traditional looking tarot, and you want something that's gonna, I suppose, step into my world a bit and how my practice looks when I'm just in and about doing my witchy thing by myself and whispering to the birds and all of the crazy shit that I do on my own, sort of, it feels like, I've said this about a couple of decks only ever, but it gives me that really kind of self-indulgent vibe of like, this deck was made for me, like.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, it's something that in 2023 I've been able to extend and use with others, to the point of one of the individuals that I read for with this went and bought the deck. So I suppose that's a risk of getting a reading with me with something you haven't but it's just, it feels like being in, how do I explain it? Like, it's the word that I'm struggling with, but in terms of like sitting with someone and being in practice with them and having a bit more of a rounded experience, it feels very kind of journey based. It's quite hard to explain, but I don't find myself saying similar things with this deck that I might with the same cards in another. It's kind of, I really let the cards evoke where I'm going, I suppose. So death still has the layers of death that the tarot archetype has across the board, but there's all this, what does the color mean, you know, what does the person feel when they see these cards, because I do video readings. What do I, you know, what am I feeling from it, what are the intuitive hits, what are the emotional hits, what's the animal, you know, is this, it takes on like a different kind of, I don't want to say shamanic, because the people who are getting the readings from me aren't necessarily that way inclined practice wise, but it takes on like this new shape that a lot of my, in fact, I don't think many of my other decks really can do this. So this is not only a standout because I'm pretty obsessed with it at this stage, but it's a standout in terms of occasionally I'll come across a deck when I can actually say, yeah, I don't have another deck that for me can replicate what I do with this. And I think most of the time, if I'm honest, even with my favorites, like I could probably find one or two more decks that do that, but so far this has been pretty much just this deck. So it's and the reason that it works for me, even though it is, I mean, I've got tiny hands, by the by, if anyone's curious, but it is a larger deck. It's not the biggest one I own, but let's get the 𝗪𝗂𝗯𝘀𝗶𝘁𝗄, which is the same size as a Llewellyn card. So it's quite a bit larger, but it's linen. It's thin, bendy linen cardstock. And so I can shuffle it long ways. And yeah, it's very beautifully confronting in that way where instead of when people go, oh, it's tough love, but they say tough love, but really it's just kind of people wanting to say whatever the fuck they want without kind of any consideration of how that person and their vulnerabilities are going to experience that. This feels like a kind of a necessary tough love that's more therapeutic. It's like it's going to approach you in a way where if there's tough love there, it's going to hold space for the outcome of that, not just the discussion of it. So yeah, wow. It's just real, and it's very funny because for me the art style reminds me of decks that I grew up with in like the 90s. Like to me this doesn't look like and this is just my commentary on it, but it doesn't look like a deck that was made in the era that it was, and yet it's I'm into it.
Yeah, it looks very powerful. When you use it for readings, is that the sole deck that you're using, or do you use it in conjunction with other decks?
That's a very good question, actually, because so far this is possibly one of the only decks I own that I have never paired up with anything else ever.
Oh, wow. I can see that though, because it looks like it packs quite a punch on its own, just looking at the images and like the keywords, key phrases.
It really does, and I can't out what I would want to use with it. I could use an animal deck with it and add another animal in, but it doesn't feel necessary. And then the other oracles I've got, they're either so emotionally heavy that it would just be an unnecessary addition, or they're too sort of flirty and here, there and everywhere. So it's yeah, it doesn't make sense to me so far. I'm sure that might change because I wasn't going to read for anyone with it, and then I did. So.
Yeah. Very cool.
And Meg said it's one of the, I think that Meg's talking about this deck anyway, so I'm behind on comments. It's one of the few I could use when I wasn't feeling well over the summer.
Wow.
Which is there's something about it being, it's easy and difficult to come to at the same time. It's very welcoming. What comes through is kind of anyone's guess.
Let's see. Phyllis is saying, with this medicine tarot, maybe the white oracle with the words would work well.
That's very true, actually.
Yeah.
I think that wouldn't be too assuming or directive at all. So that is a good point. And of course, it has the white title. So grow into it for the Seven of Pentacles, reunite, reconcile, rekindle. I think you're onto something, Phyllis.
I think so too, actually. I'm not mad at this at all. This is looking pretty good.
Oh, good look. 2024. I like it.
That's so cool. Fantastic suggestion.
So let's make you, by the way, I am absolutely loving the kitty cat table layout. I've forgotten my word.
Why, thank you. Yes, this is a reading cloth from Sunset Bow Tarot. You should check out her shop, Sunset Bow Boutique. I don't know that this print is still available, but she has tons of other fantastic, cute prints. And I need to be careful of the money I spend in her shop because she knows how to pick a fabric. So
it really does. She's on a roll, right? I've seen some of the fabric that you guys have got, and they seem to complement one of the decks you have just beautifully as well.
Yes, and actually, well, like the Hellenic that I showed earlier, I use this Sunset Boutique bag, which is just perfection, a chef's kiss. So
that does look made for it.
right. Okay, so I love seeing the decks that you've chosen, and they really serve as like nice kind of jumping off points, because you know, when you said that deck shows when the reoccurring character shows up in that deck, it's the creator. So this next deck that I'm going to show is the same kind of premise, which is the Moon Void Tarot by 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗎 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗎. And now this is a deck that I acquired some years ago, and this is an older edition and out of print. Now she has a more recent edition that's pink. It's like pink, white, and black, which I also have. I also used this year. Actually paired it up with this deck, paired it up with the Wandering Moon Tarot. Like I did a bunch of different things. And while I love them both, I will say that this iteration is by far the one that speaks to me the most. And this is a deck where it is essentially the recurring character is the creator. And I feel like normally something like that would bother me, but in this case, it doesn't at all, because while like if you saw a picture of her, you'd be like, oh yeah, no, that tracks. It is the creator. But like she didn't really draw it in like the most complete realistic likeness of her, if that makes sense, which makes it easier for me to kind of separate the two. And if anything, I can even imprint myself in this deck, you know, because see, she's just very like sketch-like, you know. It's not like a spot on depiction of the creator. And so because it is a little more not abstract, but just a little more kind of like a drawing-esque, like I can kind of see myself, you know, the long black hair, the glasses, you know, I can definitely so oh, by the way, I have modified this deck heavily. I have colored on it. I've drawn all this in actually for this particular card. So I have definitely, again, this is the way I bond with my decks. And I actually spoke with Stephanie about the fact that I wanted to color in, and which, you know what, when we purchase these decks, we can do whatever the fuck we want, right? I mean, these are our decks, and now we are at liberty to do what we want. However, when I wanted to show it on my Instagram, I also wanted to kind of be careful about not being disrespectful, so to speak. So I did kind of reach out to her and say, you know, if you're not comfortable with me showing the fact that like I completely colored all over your deck, I understand that. But she was so cool about it, and was even kind of on her Instagram encouraging the idea of making this deck your own. And so yeah, so I have definitely put splashes of color. She, in this iteration, she has put in certain splashes of red, but then I would add to it and draw on it and just do random shit that I felt like doing. And now I just, again, I feel very close with this deck. It is very introspective. When I paired it with the Wandering Moon, I think that they read well together because of the complementary like colors and Again, Moon Void and Wandering Moon, hello, matching motifs, so that works well. And I think that while you can use this as a daily draw, and I have done that, this really shines in more focused spreads as well, because it is very introspective for me. And I'm not opposed to using this for other people. And I don't know that I have yet. I'm not opposed to it, but this is a very personal deck. And so I have mainly used it up to this point. I feel like I have used this just for myself. So it's just fantastic. And whenever I pull this out, I just love the way she's depicted all of the cards. And the quartz are similar to the Wandering Moon Tarot. They're very kind of elemental based, which I personally like. So yeah, I'm really all about this deck. I don't know what else to say.
It's gorgeous. I love decks when you make them your own. Like I don't have the capacity for it, but I always really appreciate it, and I love that the creator like encourages knowledge, because I'm the same as you. I'm like, look, as long as it's not out there being disrespectful in like a harmful way that's gonna make it seem bad, once we've bought it, it is ours.
Exactly.
And when I've heard creators say the borders were meant to be on it, and I'm really offended that people are cutting the borders off, and I'm like, oh, come on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, if you're offended by that, you're not made for making stuff and putting it out into the world. So
precisely. I couldn't agree more. No, she's a lovely, lovely person. And so I've just given her a lot of money, and I'm fine with that. Because I feel like yeah, she's a great deck creator, and she has some books out as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Some, I think they're like mass market, kind of like, comprehensive tarot 101 type books. Yeah. So yeah. I'm a Eight of Cups is probably one of my favorite minors, and I don't know why, I just love her rendition of, I stamped the heart on her ass, but I don't know, I just really love this cheeky, if you will, this cheeky rendition of Eight of Cups. So yeah, one of my favorites.
Really in the heart. I feel like it adds something to the fact that it is the cup suit as well, and I feel like
yeah, it is. I think that, it is very much indicative of that suit, and also a little bit more of like a kind of like a kiss my ass, I think was what I was kind of thinking about. So, and this one is another favorite of mine. She did change this in her recent version, the pink version. She changed it to look a little more indicative of like the tradish RWS of it. Well, actually, that's not true. I think it was just a different posture. Whereas I really preferred this posture because it's child's pose. So there's something restorative about this pose that I really could appreciate, the way that the way she rendered this image. And then with the more recent pink version, it feels a little more fatalistic, it feels a little more kind of like woe is me, and that's totally fine, because that is one of the ways we could certainly read that. But this is one of my favorite cards of this particular version. So yeah, I just love this. I love this deck so much. One of my top favorites of all time. And the cardstock, I want to say this was probably printed like wholesale printed on like make playing cards or some type of like print on demand. And I, again, not mad at it, because I can actually shuffle this deck, so it's a very usable deck. So thank you, Meg. Thank you. That's really sweet.
And from sweet to funny, you can now have money.
Yeah. So it's again, one of those decks that I spend a lot of time with, and so the bond is very strong.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's do this one, because it's been, if I don't talk about this, people are going to be like, well, whereas you can't see the other you can't see whatever I don't get to will be included in my Instagram post at some point anyway. But This is probably going to be a quicker discussion because this is one of those ones where people have heard me talk about the fallen angels. But I am going to die on the hill that for me, this is, and I think one of the things is when we talk about decks that maybe are reflective of like a set of beliefs or a particular practice as well, that's where you get into more layers of like, I don't want to say agreement, but like people coming from really different places. And then the thing is, that's okay. Like, to me, that's normal for us to experience a deck or a practice in completely different ways, and it doesn't make any one person wrong. But I find hearing the contrasts and how people approach them very interesting. So I like to share my experience with this deck because it's not as it's not as winding, I suppose is the word I'll use, as some other people have expressed in terms of the fallen angels, or you can call them daemons or demons. It really depends. It just depends what you want to freaking call them, basically. But as someone who genuinely works with them and works with their of course, I'm going to forget the name. The term I want isn't sigils, it's seals. That's it. And I've used them in my actual craft practice, and I've used them in ritual, and I've engaged with them in ways that I know is not necessarily comfortable for everyone, or isn't part of their practice or whatever, and is often the part where I hear people say about, if you're going to work with this deck in that capacity, then I don't know, I feel like being respectful often gets convoluted and attached to like being serious, or only working with something in a particular way to be respectful. And I don't associate seriousness or tough stuff or like only those things with being respectful. So I definitely come to this deck and work with them with a reverence, but also this deck still very much remains a deck that sometimes I will pull a daily message from, and it's definitely a deck that I've used with many others, although it does tend to be like the key component. Even if I'm using this with tarot, this is the boss. But this deck has, for one that's got, I don't know again how many cards there are. I'm going to say about 70 something from memory. It's definitely a nice, we all know I like fair-sized oracle deck. I'm a fussy one. But it's pretty cut down the middle from memory, because I do enjoy doing these weird things where I'll go through a deck and compare how many like more challenging keywords there are, more uplifting keywords, and more neutral, and I will compare those and make little stats in my tarot, notes, because it brings me joy. And this is very down the middle. Like, there is a lot of challenging, difficult terms in this deck. It repeats the keyword danger. People often moan about this. It doesn't bother me at all. It makes sense for the particular demons that it's on, but I think danger's on there 5 to 7 times, and then there's a couple of other words that are on there about 3 to 4, and then everything else is unique. But considering there's that many, this has been nothing but gentle with me throughout an entire year, and I want to probably push that. Aside from the Memento Mori Oracle, this is probably one of my most used decks in 2023, which possibly seems a little bit peculiar to people if I was to say I've been suffering with quite a significant amount of depression this year. And this was my go-to deck because I don't have that hard, dark, sort of only big challenging energy with this, and it has literally, so here's one of the cards that says danger. It has literally given me the most uplifting readings, and the work that I've done with some of these individuals in my practice has just been really, really necessary. Some of it a bit self-indulgent, but you know, that's okay when you're running on empty. It kind of becomes more of a necessity than a luxury. But it's just very interesting because it's one for me that gets kind of coined one way, and it's not that I disagree with people having that experience at all. I enjoy listening to it, but I definitely I definitely like to go up and say that that's not the entire picture for me. It has just been so freaking versatile, and they start to play quite nicely with others. It is one of those decks where occasionally, and I don't have stuff like this happen to me very often, which is why years ago I'd have rolled my eyes, to be quite honest, but I will have this deck on a side and then a card will 100% be in a different position. And I found it's only happened twice, but I'm like, I will say to my partner, have you been in the room? Has the cat been? Like, come on now. I can't remember what I was doing with it one day, and I dropped it, and as I rolled back, I rolled over one of the cards.
Oh no.
Like a little divot, a dent, and then I used the deck straight after, and I'm telling you what, it scolded me. Suddenly I'm getting a danger and lost. And like, be fucking careful. And I was like, excellent. And I shuffled it, and I'm like, I'm having a pretty good day, so this seems a bit strange, because I don't tend to read too predictively in that capacity, although I'm not anti it. And same stuff coming up. So I leave it on the altar and I chuck some offerings around it, and the next day it's fine. And I'm like, fair enough. Okay, maybe I'm just losing my marbles, or maybe legitimately a thing. I'm not really worried either way, but I love it so much that I wish I actually had 2 copies of it at one point, and I gifted a copy of it to a friend because they'd always try it, and I think it was a bit of a swing and a miss for them anyway, and they parted with it. But I don't often have 2 copies of decks. I'm very, very tempted to get a second copy of this at some point, and it's over here, it's like very, very cheap as well. Sometimes it goes on sale and it's about £11-12. It's that, you know, I hate this cardstock. It's that, is it 𝗵𝘁𝗀𝗲𝗄 books? They don't publish a lot, but they do this deck. They do. It used to be called one thing, and now I think it's like Animal Spirit or something tarot deck that's like pastel-y colours. But they only do a couple, and they're this really glossy cardstock, but actually it's really bendy and easy to shuffle again. So
So that's a deck that I've definitely seen, and it's always been so intriguing to me. How is, like, for someone like me who is not familiar with this kind of realm of fallen angels, how does the guidebook fare? I mean, did you ever crack it open, or is it that you're just like, nope, I'm just using the deck and screw the guidebook?
So it depends how you want to work with it. And the book's actually out on the side, ironically, so I'll grab it because it no, it's not. I'm lying. Where did I put it? Okay, it's the other side. That's fine. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. And the reason that I say it's not amazing and it's not bad, which is a total contradiction, is because people will know who are more familiar with like the fallen angels and demons and stuff. And I'll show a book just before we go onto your deck as well, or a different book, is that there's not always a lot of information on them historically, and there's a lot of reasons why that is. But commonly people will go to I think it's pronounced the 𝗺𝗺𝗁𝗃. Will go to the Book of Solomon. They'll get information based on them there, but it's quite sparse. So in terms of, let me get the card up that we're looking at. I like what they've done with them. There are a few things where they've picked associations that I wouldn't necessarily know how they got those associations, because I can't always find the right information for it. But I think in terms of the fact that when you're looking at some of the demons, it will be like, and they had a horde of armies of this many people, and you'll see those kind of sentences repeated over and over again, which would be really challenging for someone to them to like get any message from that. In that sense, we've got 𝗺𝗺𝗁, again, my pronunciation is probably tragic, but celebration, a pleasant surprise is in store, possibly reacquaintance with an old friend, usually appears as a strong, wise man, what in the Middle Ages used to be called a cunning man, who was often also the village blacksmith. He understands the virtues of herbs and the ways of calm wisdom. He shows how to achieve your ambitions, not by any great show of strength, but through persuasion and quiet, eloquent diplomacy. 𝗺𝗺 is also a great discoverer of lost treasures and a reminder of forgotten enthusiasms. Now, I think that that's a fair amount for someone who knows nothing about them, and not every time, but often enough when I've looked into them, I can see that it seems mostly well researched. There are, like I said, bits, and I'm like, where have you pulled this from? And there are also some gender changes, which I don't see in some of the original stuff. Now, I'm not really attached to that. I'm all for some gender mix-up. But in terms of how much it aligns with the other texts, it does a fair amount, but it's a bit wishy-washy in terms of if people wanted to work with the demon in more of a greater way, then they would probably do what I do, which is, for ages I used to research them on Google, and eventually I got this behemoth, which is not going to fit in.
Wow.
But this is the Dictionary of the Demons, and that's one of the, I've got a 𝗺cie book as well, but on a friend actually sent that to me, so that's like a Kindle version or whatever, and I've got this, and that's how I work with them when I'm actually working with them.
Okay.
If I'm just working with them in more of a everyday oracle, sense, I don't use the book, basically. I'm not sure if it's helpful or not, but
no, that's definitely helpful. Phyllis is saying that she personally uses the Solomon grimoire, and then the 𝗵𝗁𝗀𝗄𝗃 Pathworking is a good book.
Yes, I think that's the one I've got, actually. I think so. It's got some like I don't know if they would refer to them as rituals, but certainly some like invitations and start off stuffs, as well as their seals, and also how to close down that process as well as open it.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool.
So yeah, I love it, and it just it gives my teen self so much joy aesthetically.
I can totally see that.
Yeah. So let's we're getting into the 1.5 hour mark, so we'll just let people know we've agreed to not go on for more than 2 hours. Everyone will be glad to hear that as well. They're like, okay, we'll hang out with you, but not for longer than that.
Exactly. Okay, so this might, I don't know if this is cheating or not, but I felt like I wanted to mention this one because this one was a fun one for me, in that it's one that I just made for myself and have been using in a similar way as the Hellenic Oracle, a way of like connecting with also Hellenic, connecting with Greek mythology. This deck is just my own little DIY animal deck, and my own way of connecting with different animals that I have been seeing in the wild. Now that I've moved to an area where there's like woods behind me, it is amazing how many different animals I am now seeing that I've never seen before when I was living in like a condominium. And so I just decided that I wanted to, as someone who has always touted like, I don't care for or like animal oracles or animal decks, and just a bunch of bullshit really, because I have so many animal decks now, and now I've made one, and this is specifically tailored for my wanting to learn more about the different animals that I'm seeing, and animals that I might have a bit of like a contentious association with that I want to repair. And then so
Yeah.
so this is what we call in Korea, it's called the money buggy. I don't know what you call it in America. Is it like a centipede or like what is this one? Trigger warning insect, but what is that? I don't know what these are called in the US. But anyway, so just I've incorporated some insects, and I've just incorporated like just different animals that I are familiar with, like I'm familiar with in terms of like my particular geographic area, or it could even be ones that I'm not. Like, so for instance, like we don't get sugar gliders, but this is an animal that I've been wanting to learn more about. Of course, the squirrel, mustache bug. Is that what that's called? I've never heard that before. I love that, actually.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, very cool. So anyway, so the way I've been working with this deck, I created it and this year, and the way I've been working with it is that I will, just randomly choose an animal and, just do some study on it, to learn more just about just general facts about the habit, its habitat, its behavior, diet, lifespan, all that. And a lot of birds as well, just because I've been seeing a lot of birds in my area. And then so I'm making notes in my bullet journal. And then eventually what I am going to do, like same thing with the Hellenic Oracle, is then kind of make a more succinct kind of guidebook, if you will, with just kind of more keyword associations that then I plan to kind of use this in more of like an oracle deck kind of sense.
Mm.
So yeah, I had fun creating it, thinking about the animals that would come to mind, and like the insects, a lot of insects, funny enough, because I'm not really an insect person. And then I have like animals like this.
Brilliant. I see Dino and was like, awesome.
And then this one is one, again, I have a kind of contentious association with. So again, I'm trying to heal. We don't get these in the US, and yet like they scare me. They scare the bejesus out of me, the harpy eagle. So like things like that, it's a way of kind of working through. But yeah, so I've just been having a lot of fun learning about the different animals, trying to connect better with the different animals. Again, mourning dove, these little bastards, I swear, they just keep me up at all hours. Again, we still feed them. We're still nice to them, but by God.
Do you know, I'm actually wearing because for people who don't know, pigeons and doves are the same. It's just they've got different based on their different sizing and colouring, but the same. And I'm actually wearing my pigeon sweater.
Are you? That's amazing. I love that. I love that. So again, praying mantis, another insect that I've had some trauma in my girlhood. There's been some trauma there.
They're quite feisty.
They are
striking. The elongated way that they move, I think, really gets some people as well.
Yes, and they're so large. They're so large. They're so sizable for an insect. And yeah, so we're going to work on that a little bit. Meerkats are just simply one of my favorite animals. We don't have them here in the States, but like I remember just binge watching Meerkat Manor on the Animal Planet channel. I don't know if you're familiar with that show, but Meerkat Manor is essentially, it's basically, it's kind of like following these meerkats in the wild. But they were very much anthropomorphized, for sure. Like the show definitely anthropomorphized them, gave them names, kind of gave them a bit of personalities. And that was really a detriment when, nature happened and things didn't go well. And I will never watch a show like that again. So, but I love me a meerkat, and just different animals that I want to get to know better. So, and then I want to make this like an actual Oracle deck to use.
I think you may have made my heart burst with joy.
Aww, thank you.
I'm just, you know, I am that sucker. Like if someone says to me, I've made an animal deck for myself because I'm learning, and then they say, not only might you take away some like we all do, like the spiritual or the more divinatory aspect of it, but I'm learning about stats and their environment and you know what goes on for them, and I'm like, oh, sweet, talk to me.
Yes, and it's been a lot of fun, honestly. You know, I've been learning a lot.
It's such a cute size, and so far I don't think I've seen an animal that I'm not familiar with, so I'm like,
I want, you know, I'm a sucker for a mini. I'm a sucker for a mini deck, and so I wanted to make it a mini, and
I'm not usually, but this is perfect. This is like really chuck it in my, because I'm not a bag human. Like my poor partner is my bag, basically. He loves, I'm sure. I could literally fit it in my pocket. It's such a good idea.
Yes, yeah. I love me a mini, and so it was just a lot of fun to be thinking about these different animals, you know. Of course the elephant is my particular kind of animal guide, if you will, and one that has very, very special meaning for me. So of course I had to have the elephant in there. You know, the stink bug, once again, we're not friends, me and the stink bug. We're not friends at all, but I'm working on it. So yeah.
No, that was one of their nicknames, because I was just in my own little world. Like over here, I've only ever called my dad, call them shield bugs.
Oh, shield bugs. I can see that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'll like move them with my hands and this, that, and the other. And people are like, no, but the smell. And I'm like, I don't know what you're on about.
I guess is it the smell of, I mean, they smell if you like kill them, right? And like their guts, is that where the smell comes from, or do they actually smell?
Well, see, the way that people made it sound, but honestly, it's one of the things that I haven't looked into yet, is that it's made it sound like it was more like, you know, when things can musk because it's like, oh shit, I'm in danger.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Saying to me, it was more like, it depends on like how your nose picks up things, because my dad's pretty strange like me, and he was like, oh, I think it smells like marzipans. And so this is one of your decks that you have available? This is just your...
I don't. This is just mine. And I will not make this available because it's you know, it's personal, and it's and also, you know, some of the images aren't, I can't say for sure that they're in the public domain. You know, where I chose public domain images, and I also wanted to keep kind of the style cohesive. So kind of this kind of softer watercolor style. So I cannot be sure that all of them are free use. So that's why I'm not going to go there. It's just solely for my own learning.
Well, I love it. You've made me very happy.
Thank you. Of course I had a unicorn, of course, you know, this is just all over the place, honestly. This deck is all over the place,
but that's what makes it yours. You know?
Exactly. No rule, you know, there's just like a no rules kind of thing with this deck. So yeah, this is my little DIY animal oracle.
My favorite deck that has appeared today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, this is very yes, you came into Animal Woman's land.
I did.
I'm like, yes.
So I thought it'd be okay to share here, given that it is Animal Woman's land.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cheating. This is not cheating. Making a deck for yourself is fucking cool. Like, honestly, I've wanted to do it a lot just for myself, but finding a printer in the UK is like for that kind of just solo project is actually a lot more challenging. And also I don't really know, if I'm honest. Like I use a lot of free to share photography for stuff that I do, like just as fleshing out stuff on Patreon, because obviously I can't go out into the wild and like photograph everything. But I don't know of any like art places. I'm not really up on that kind of information as to how to make a deck like that. But So what do you want to do? Do you want to, we've been on for 1:43. Do you want to do one more decky?
Sure. Whatever you would like to do. Your channel, your rules. I'm here for the ride.
I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. But I'll make it quicker. And it means I won't have shared everything either. So when people see my Instagram who have watched this, then they can at least have some new information. And now I'm like, oh, do I go tarot or oracle?
Oh, decisions.
I'm going to go for a very light-hearted one. Also, because I haven't shown anything. Well, I've shown the curiosities, I suppose. So I have shown something animally. And then there were animals in my tarot. I've shown a lot of animals. I'm going to show more.
Okay.
But this one is more of it's not that this isn't an impactful deck. It is. But a lot of the love affair that I have with this is finally getting an art style that I've wanted in an animal deck.
Ooh.
So this is like I guess the more aesthetic. I don't think it's a superficial layer, but I know that's how people will see it.
Oh, yes.
And that is the Woodland Wardens. And honestly, since getting this deck, and let me bring my list up. When did I get this? This is one of the newer ones. So this was in mid-2022.
Mm-hmm.
Since getting this, I have found myself using it as a representation for our animal of the month over on my Patreon as much as humanly. So because the animals, I don't always just draw an animal from a card. Like over the years, sometimes an animal will just like come into my brain, or they'll literally come into like my space, or it's really random nowadays how I select our animal that we're working with for each month. But if I could find it in this deck, then this deck has been our visual representation of it, because if I could pick a way to be able to draw, it would be this way. It's like this is natural history, animal encyclopedia books before they started having photography in them. And as I've already alluded to, I do often around kind of birthdays and Christmas, I'll go on to some of the secondhand books places. So like World of Books is a really good one for secondhand books, and I will buy random. I'll show one, because a lot of the information in these is dated, but the imagery in them is freaking glorious. So I am weird, and I'll grab one of these for like £2 or £3, which is absolutely affordable, just so that I can, of course, spiders. What am I doing? There we go. Some snails. There we go. And I literally will get these. If they've got these kind of drawings in, I will get them. I don't have like a favourite animal. It could be insects. It could be mammals. You name it. So when this deck came out, I was like, oh, look at it. It's so pretty.
It really is. It is. I have this too, and I love it.
So good. I will confess, I do have a tendency, depending on my mood, to ignore the plant. Not purposefully, not like, oh, I'm not working with that, but it really depends on the mood. Like I'll always work with the animal, whether the plant comes into it. It's not something that I would do in when I'm creating content and offerings that others are paying for, because I don't know enough about the plants to feel like I could offer enough. I'd just be regurgitating very much from something I just read. But certainly when I'm working with it in my own practice, I will occasionally, especially like this, because obviously I'm more familiar with pomegranate. Some of the plants I'm familiar with, and then all of a sudden I realise, oh, there is a bunch of stuff that I know about this. But then I will stumble on something like, I'm actually not that familiar with iris, whereas sycamores I could talk about. So it's an interesting deck to me that it doesn't feel like it's very forceful in its presentation, because I've heard a few people, even though the animal's clearly quite centric, say that they predominantly focus on the other, and then it seems to be really versatile for that. Ivy's another one that I'm really familiar with, whereas chrysanthemum, I never say it, is not. But it's basically like a little mini encyclopedia. I think that the keywords were chosen really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
The book, whenever I talk about the book, I think people get maybe the wrong idea. I actually really love the book. The creator is just, chef's kiss, good at what she does. And it's got folklore in it, which, if people don't know, that's one of my things. I freaking love me folklore. And the fact that she's been able to tie it in with the plant and the animal, very good. When I got this deck, it was actually one of those rare occasions where I pre-ordered it, which is freaking like rocking shit. Seriously, I'm always the last to get a deck, but I wanted to jump in on this one straight away. And so it had mentioned the folklore, and I know that she's really like, it's one of the things that she's passionate about, and she's good at writing about it and stuff. So it was just more so that I thought that I would get a lot more folklore than I do. So for the people who don't want to be overwhelmed, then, because you could, like, the fox one in particular is really, really, really short, and actually there's no folklore whatsoever. And so it was more that, like, it's not a bad book. It didn't, I can learn about the plant a little tiny bit, but it didn't really give me what I thought it was going to. And so it's more that it's not bad. It's just, you know, I'm a nerd. If they'd have told me it's a massive A4 book and it's got, 400 pages, I'd have been like, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it would have cost a lot more money, but that would have been fine. It's I don't want to spend too much time on it because I want you to have your portion too, but honestly, Animal Oracle, this one has stolen the show this year, and it's got quite a lot of animals in it that are native to me, which makes a difference.
Oh, absolutely. It's
not all of them, so it's not quite the same, but it's just that there are a few of them that I don't always get in the other oracles. And growing up on sort of mainly North American animal decks until the last however many decade or two, it's been refreshing seeing come through with something a bit different.
That is one of the Animal Oracle decks that really I just really fell in love with when I think I got that maybe sometime in 2022, maybe towards the end of 2022. I can't remember, but I just fell in love instantly. And again, as someone who is trying to connect more with animals and knows next to nothing about plants, I felt like the guidebook has been super helpful. And just, 𝗪𝗻 𝗺 just did a fantastic job. She knocked it out of the park with this one.
It's I feel like it's a great beginner book for those
It
things.
is, yes.
Divination aid, when you don't want to have to, like, it's just not a research. Like, I'm a very research person, and it didn't sell itself as research anyway, but I just thought the folklore would be more. But it's very good for beginners, very good for like quick divination support.
Exactly. It's definitely it's great that it's concise, and yet at the same time very clear in its connection between the flora that it chooses to depict paired with the animal. So I think that she did a fantastic job, given that it's a smaller guidebook, and so she doesn't spend too much time, and it's like a good 50 some 60, I can't remember. It's a decent sized oracle deck for it being mass market. So yeah.
It's good. Right, let's
Okay, so I'm gonna leave it up to you to choose, Tegan.
Ooh.
I could talk about an Animal Oracle deck, or I could talk about a Lenormand.
Oh no. I'm going to be greedy and say animal.
Okay. Well, this is probably pretty predictable since I mentioned this to you earlier, but I'm gonna have to say, even though I haven't had this for very long, I've been working with it these past few weeks, and this is probably one of the didn't buy too many oracles this year, actually, a small number, and this would be definitely a standout oracle for 2023 for me, which is the Thistledown by 𝗳𝗿𝗄𝗎𝗄𝗎. And is this another Stephanie Burrows? It is, right? Yeah, Stephanie Burrows and 𝗳𝗿𝗄𝗎𝗄𝗎. So this has just been, so this is my only, I mean, I have the Soul Cats, which I've been using this paired together with the two of them together, and it's been fantastic. And this has been like a stalker card for me. And this one as well. These two have been repeater cards. And but I haven't had any, like I don't have the Oak Ash and Thorn. I don't have the Smoke Ash and Embers. I know they're coming out with the other one, which looks adorable with the mice. Anyway, so this has been really a wonderful deck to work with. I have had some repeater cards that have spoken, as I showed you earlier, but they've spoken pretty directly. I mean, it's been calling me out in a very gentle way in terms of certain things. And so this has been a deck that, like, I will say has pleasantly surprised me in how kind of spot on the keywords have been in like correlation to, you know, something that I've been having to deal with, or even paired with the Soul Cats. They do really speak nicely to each other, not just in terms of the aesthetics because they're the same artists, but just in terms of the cards that I would get from each deck. And so this has been, I don't know, I don't have too much to say about it. Oh, spider, trigger warning, spider. But like the cutest spider freaking ever. Can we not say? I mean,
it just wants.
Yeah. I mean, I think 𝗳𝗿𝗄𝗎𝗄𝗎, he's so talented. He's so talented. But yeah, this is an oracle deck that I feel that the keywords really do resonate, and they really do speak very directly, and again, just very on the nose to things that come up for me or have come up for me in the last few weeks. And then of course the certain repeater cards that I've been, you know, whatever. Yeah, I just kind of pawn it off to whatever, chalk it up to whatever, and then, you know, comes back to me. And for a reason, you know? So I've just been really falling in love with this deck, I have to say. And it makes me like low-key tempted to get the tarot. I'm not gonna lie. Like the Oak Ash and Thorn and, and the little mouse one that's coming out. I mean, I'm probably not gonna get the mouse one. I feel like this is a nice size. The card stock is really nice to shuffle because of its size. It seems a little bit smaller than the tarot, and of course a bit thinner. So the tarot might be a little harder for me, which is why I've stayed away from all of those tarot decks. But they're really nice. It's just really beautiful imagery. It's a mix of, I feel like this is kind of a mix of what we see in the Oak Ash and then the smoke ash, the two, you know, with the dragon, and then you have the other different kind of the creatures, the forest creatures. So it's been a great reader. And I would like to at some point I'm wondering how this would work in terms of just a more focused reading, just using this deck and no other, just like on its own. I'm kind of curious about that.
And do you find it's quite a nice one for you because it's not centered on you having to know things about the animals?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is something that both Heather and Sarah have spoken to a lot too, which is that, you know, I don't need to know the, you know, realistic behaviors of these animals. I don't need to, it's not something where I have to be reading like the National Geographic magazine to figure out what, you know, it's really about, it's really about the context of the scene in which you find the creature in, and how that resonates and how that connects with then the key the key title, you know, the word chosen. And so I feel like for the, you know, overall, it's really worked well.
I'd be really keen to hear how you get on with it, using it just on its own as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used it with tarots, but not
on its own. Yeah, I just feel like yeah, the keywords, I think it could work, you know, just being its own kind of deck for a more maybe focused reading. But yeah, we'll see. That's something for the near future.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Yeah.
Look at you with all the animal decks.
I know, right? I'm such a freaking hypocrite, man. Like, I don't do animal decks. Meanwhile, I have like 20 animal decks now.
I mean, that's my kind of hypocrite. You know, yes, I think there's that line, isn't there? Like, when we exist online and you put something out into the world, it was true at that time.
Yes.
And things age fucking poorly, as we know. Yeah, I've said I wouldn't use decks for people because at that time I really, really wouldn't have, and then it changes. And I see that more as people's natural growth as opposed to like lying, but it is always funny. So
yeah, it is so true. And so yeah, it's just like eating my words, and I will be eating my words, you know, in the future, I am sure. But that's just the nature of, you know, tarot, and like, yeah, a tarot practice. You're just ever evolving. So, you know, got to watch what you say, especially when it's recorded for the public. But, you know, whatever. I am totally fine to say that, yes, I have indeed erred in my ways, and I've seen the light now. So
yeah, welcome to the right.
Yes.
I am so damn biased when it comes to it. It's unreal. I definitely acknowledge like it's a complete blind spot for me because I'm like, you don't like animal decks? You're
it's like, what? And it's and in the beginning that was always just it was always head scratching for me, and that I love animals. I love animals. So then for me then not to get along with, or just not to ever pick up animal decks, you know, when I had the few that I had in the beginning, I'm just like, what's wrong with me? Like, what is it? But now I'm fine. It's great. I'm embracing, and I'm acquiring more animal decks, it seems. So
I'm living for it. And people that they've been using it with the okay, which is predominantly what I'd been using it with as well. But yeah. Well, I've loved this. I have to say, I didn't find as many of yours as obvious as I thought I would. There were
I was trying my best not to be predictable as fuck, because I feel like I always am. So
you were definitely the less predictable of the two of us.
Yay!
You can have that medal. I'll allow it.
Woo. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on. This was so much fun. I had a great time.
It went really quickly for me.
It really did.
I mean, who knows what everyone else thought, but hey, for me. So yes, I'm hoping to do more collaborations in the future, especially with Julie, because she is the first person I ever did a YouTube live with, and I showed my face. So you'll probably be seeing my face on here in the future eventually when I give up and just film it. So oh, and just before I close off, Merciful Mermaid, because I think she's just jumped in, and we are wrapping up to go, but you can watch this 2-hour video back. You can always put us on fast. I don't have any animal themed decks, but I started using a children's animal flashcard learning deck as an animal oracle, which is such a great idea.
I love that. Yeah.
You can use any, I will say this for like everything, you can use any deck. I mean, I've seen people before, like if it hasn't got keywords on it and you buy like a playing card deck and it's animals or fairies or whatever it is you want to learn about, you can always write on it as well and add your own.
Yes, exactly. I'm all about DIYs and making a deck your own and finding creative ways of just making it work for you, you know?
And you're a very good example of that, whereas I'm much more of I tell people to do it and don't do it. I'm such a hypocrite, but for me, it's more like than anything else. Like I'm like, I will force my brain to remember this, so I have to write on it. But yeah. So, well, thank you for hanging out with us, everyone, as well.
Yeah.
We've appreciated it, especially for this long old time. Please check out Julie's channel. You already all know her anyway, but just in case. And also check out the 3 Girls 1 Deck standout video if you didn't see it already, because there's some really good discussions and decks in there as well. And that's all from us. Have you got any last words, Julie?
No, I just want to reiterate. Yes, thank you. Thank you all for hanging out with us here in the live chat. It was so much fun. I had the best time.
I'm glad. So I'm going to end the stream for everyone else, and then I will say goodbye to you privately.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.